there's one takeaway from all the recent Summer Game Fest announcements and reveals, it's that 2023 is going to be a really big year for games. Sure, 2022 still has some bangers, with October being stacked right now and the rest of the holiday period taking some shape, but it's in 2023 that the battle for Game of the Year will be really interesting. So let's go over all the heavy hitters that are currently slated for next year, including titles that are not announced yet, but rumored and that I predict will likely drop in 2023. So a ton to go over. Of course, if you like me are excited and curious about 2023, then leaving a like on the video would really help me out. Subscribe for more coverage of these upcoming games, and let's go. Early 2023 is already looking pretty crowded, with at the start of the year the delayed open world action game from the team behind Final Fantasy 15, Forspoken. Like, I'm always for big AAA new IPs, and this one where a current day woman is transported into a fantasy world and suddenly gets pretty cool looking powers to take out magical creatures could be great. Only the B-roll from half a year ago did not do the game any favors, so I really hope that thanks to the extra polish time it looks better when we see it again. There's also not a lot of competition around the January 24th date. The only other AAA release is the next gen only Dead Space remake, built from the ground up with the Frostbite engine. And it already looks great in the work in progress footage they shared, but the big blowout is currently planned for October 2022. It will keep a lot of the original structure intact, but with all new assets and character models, and with some improvements to previous systems that did not really work well. But that's not the only next-gen horror remake we get, with Resident Evil 4 already dropping March 24th, 2023. It's one of the most beloved Resident Evil titles, of course. If you never played it, Leon from RE2 this time goes on a mission to save the US president's daughter, who has been kidnapped to a remote village in Europe, with of course not everything being as it seems. RE4 introduced way more action to the series, with also more weapons to use and combat options for Leon, including the ability to suplex a stunned enemy, and I'm really curious how this looks in the remake. Like, of course, looking at the previous remakes, this is going to be pretty huge when it comes out, and it will be releasing close to Redfall. It's also kind of a dark shooter, but this one is only on Xbox and PC. After the recent gameplay reveal, I'm really getting low-key excited, as it's basically Borderlands, but with more gameplay options like sneaking around, some more horror, thriller, and it's of course from Arcane, who we know from Prey and Dishonored, so sign me up. And believe it or not, Dead Island 2 has been planned by Embracer Group for a before April 2023 release. Maybe they, just like Saints Row, announced it during Gamescom with then a release in February or March, which was of course the plan before Saints Row got pushed. Now don't worry, it's not only zombies and horror in the early 2023 window. The really cool looking open world RPG Flintlock is also planned for a launch around that time. We saw it during the Xbox show, just like Wukong Fallen Dynasty from the Neo creators, that is also planned for early next year. Now EA still has a major IP planned for Q4 of their financial year, which between January and March 2023. And the only real option is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, as we learned that Skate 4, just called Skate, is launching way later in 2023 or maybe even 2024. Credible leaker Jeff Grubb also said that the game is planned for either February or March, with the PlayStation database having the game for early March. So really think we will see more footage soon if the game is really coming out in early 2023. It's totally one of my most anticipated games right now. First planned for February 2023 was the smaller new Assassin's Creed game where we play Valhalla character Basim in Baghdad. The game is now expected to be released in the May to June period, according to Bloomberg. Should also be more stealth focused, basically more like the older games, although it was first a Valhalla DLC, so I'm really curious how different it can feel. And I would not be surprised if there's another Assassin's Creed project in 2023. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. I will discuss more Ubisoft games for 2023 in a moment. I think we can already both agree that the early months of next year look pretty great, right? And then I did not even mention the day before, which is currently planned for March 1st. Although I have a hard time believing that the game is actually real, looking at the very scripted gameplay trailers for this so-called open world MMO. We will see. 2023. I can see Tales from the Borderlands 2 slip to 2023 as well, and one of the Capcom games is gonna launch in that February and March window too, and I think it's gonna be Street Fighter 6. We've seen it a lot during Summer Game Fest and other events already, so seems like they're close to being done. Although it could also be the live service dinosaur shooter Exo Primal that I at least want to try once. So yeah, Capcom has something as well, and Crisis Core Remaster will likely hit in January, like February as well, as that is currently planned for next winter. So it could still be in 2022, but yeah, winter is mostly in 2023. Also, we're looking forward to this one. But where 2022 fell flat after March with no big release till August, like we're in that period at the time of this recording, in 2023 the big hits will keep on coming. Starfield is of course going to be huge when it comes out, likely in that spring window. I think the gameplay looked fine, we saw a ton of depth in many systems. I think it will be a fun game to get lost in. Maybe not the game of the year quality people are hoping for, but as a Game Pass Day 1 title, it will of course be absolutely massive. But I'm personally more looking forward to Suicide Squad. After watching the amazing James Gunn movie and the Peacemaker TV show that I can recommend to everyone, like I'm even more hyped for this Rocksteady game set in their Arkham universe. We of course have to take on the Justice League, taken over by Brainiac, which should result in some cool boss fights. It's an open world action game, probably some live service post-launch elements, although they could have changed that. I just want to see more, as the gameplay they showed looked really fluid and solid, especially if you compare it to the recent Gotham Knights footage we saw. Like, I'm still looking forward to that game, but it feels kinda as the appetizer for the big meal, which is Suicide Squad. Now, we only need Peacemaker as a playable character, and I will buy the collector's edition day 1, guaranteed. What's overall exciting about 2023 is that it seems to be the year where we finally transition to full-on next-gen games, with of course the hope that the consoles are easier to get by that point as well. Only a few titles I mentioned so far, Wolong, Crisis Core and Flintlock, are dropping on PS4 and Xbox One, while the other titles are PS5 and Xbox Series only next to PC. I can still see both the potential Far Cry game and Assassin's Creed Rift with Basim be cross-gen, as they are both based on Valhalla and Far Cry 6 in terms of tech, but overall we're really making that shift. The new Forza Motorsport also seems to be cross-gen, although I'm curious if all the new graphical leaps they showed will also be possible on Xbox One. And if we stay in that spring 2023 window, we also have Diablo 4 planned for around that time as well. I still don't really believe it, but it totally did look further along than I expected looking at the recent Xbox trailer. Seems like a complete package with some cool open world twist as well. Now let's hope that it's not over monetized as Immortals is. They said they would not do it, but yeah, that mobile game did not do them any favors. Also worth noting is that the Overwatch 2 PvE component should also drop in 2023, while the PvP multiplayer is of course going in early access on October 4th. I'm not interested in the PvP myself, but co-op with a story campaign could be fun. Already mentioned many multi-million sellers for 2023, but maybe the biggest game for that spring window is Breath of the Wild 2, that still has no official title, by the way. Yeah, I usually don't cover Nintendo games on the channel, while I have been playing my Switch OLED a lot recently, but I do think it's worth mentioning that the game of the year from 2017 for many people, for me it was Horizon, but I totally get that people picked Zelda instead. Like, the sequel will be a juggernaut either way when it releases in 2023. Other titles that already have a window are Final Fantasy 16 for summer 2023, and the recent State of Play trailer really made me more interested. It showed, of course, the big battles between the massive, giant, godlike icons that should play a huge part in the story as well. The combat system with the protagonist Clive looks really fun and flashy too, which should be no surprise, as the combat director on Dragon's Dogma and DMC5 is part of the development team. 2023 could really be the year of Final Fantasy, as both Crisis Core and also the Final Fantasy VII Remake hit in this year as well. Although, just like with Crisis Core, winter could also mean that Part 2 shifts to early 2024 instead. This is a PS5 exclusive, should be way more open this time, I really can't wait. Although, I think my most anticipated game for 2023 is Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I really miss the Insomniac Spider-Man world, and now finally seeing Peter and Miles team up against Venom in a full-on next-gen title just has a ton of potential. Like, it will of course be really good, but I hope Marvel Spider-Man 2 brings Insomniac to the Santa Monica or like Naughty Dog status in terms of quality. But the fact that it's the only announced title from Sony for 2023 is also really exciting. I think the Last of Us multiplayer game, we of course got that concept art for, is probably coming next year as well. They're overall planning 6 live service titles by the end of fiscal year 2023, so many multiplayer Sony titles are on the way and will release in 2023, but there are way more options. Like, it would be time for the next game from Bluepoint after their Demon's Souls remake at the end of 2020. Sony usually has multiple big releases in one year, so there are totally more titles planned that we simply don't know about yet. Maybe they talk about it soon. Yes, I already briefly mentioned the Far Cry game. I still think it's happening. They always launch a spin-off to a mainline title a year or a year and a half later. We now got new job postings for a Far Cry game at Ubisoft Toronto. The creators of Far Cry 6, one of the lead developers at Toronto, is working on an unannounced game for quite some time. Like, many things are pointing in the spin-off direction. And if you want to know more and why I also think that Foss will play a big role, a link to a video I did on this subject will be in the video description. Avatar was of course delayed, so that could now be 2023, although I can see them push it even further to launch with the third movie in 2024. And overall, it's kind of hard to predict what is going to happen with Ubisoft these days, as it really seems that huge titles like Assassin's Creed Infinity are further off than 2023. And there are also other options, like we know they're working on a new mainline Ghost Recon game, or The Crew 3 that seems to be coming, just like an Immortal sequel. Also, if the Assassin's Creed 1 remake they hinted at thanks to the updated logo and cinematic trailer is real, then I can maybe see that as a holiday 2023 game. So really a ton of options, but apart from Rift, it's hard to be really sure. There are also many titles simply planned for 2023, but with no date yet, like Alan Wake 2, the long-awaited sequel from Remedy, should be coming out. This time it will be way more of a survival horror game, and they also want to explore Alan's personality way more. Hellblade 2 is another big one that you would hope to see next year, at least not before July 2023, as it wasn't in the Xbox show. But like August or maybe fall would of course make sense. But if I could pick one game as the biggest surprise hit for 2023, I think it will be Black Myth Wukong. Every new gameplay reveal has been ranking in millions of views on YouTube because it just looks amazing. Maybe the first real next-gen looking game we saw back in the day, but it keeps surprising with every trailer they drop, with amazing environments, the boss fight variety looks incredible, very interesting combat. They want this game out in 2023, and if they're able to hit that, it will probably be one of the biggest games of the year. Which is usually Call of Duty of course, but seems that for the first time since the first Modern Warfare in 2007, they will skip a year, this according to Bloomberg. Modern Warfare 2 coming out this year will be supported for longer, just like Warzone 2 that is dropping around the same time. But it's of course Activision, so they're still launching some Call of Duty stuff in 2023. We know there's a mobile Warzone in the works, and even though we do not get like a new mainline game, Activision says that premium paid content is still coming in 2023. Like, there are rumors about a standalone, maybe paid zombie experience, so maybe we see that, or they could remaster an old campaign. And there are even more titles that we maybe don't know a lot about, but that are planned for 2023. Dragon Age 4 is scheduled for fall next year. Payday 3 is also planned for 2023 as of today. We will finally get that Cyberpunk 2077 expansion next year, and according to leaks, this takes place in the Combat Zone, an inaccessible area in the Pacifica region. I do look forward to going back to that game after all this time. Arc 2 with Vin Diesel is coming next year, hopefully Dragon's Dogma 2, and I really hope we see the Wonder Woman game from Monolith Productions in 2023. Shadow of War was October 2017, so it has been 6 years since their last game. And also, after Suicide Squad, we don't know about other big Warner games that are planned for beyond that. So I think Wonder Woman next year makes some sense. Don't let me know which game you're looking forward to in the next year. And yes, I totally missed some titles like The Wolf Among Us and Stralker. Okay, does it still count? Either way, let me know in the comments down below as well if I missed your favorite game. And of course, a like would really help me out. Subscribe, because next week we will have a regular Sunday video. This was a video we worked on for quite some time. We delayed it a bit, so wanted to launch it now. And then next week we will do a new rumor and leaks roundup video. You can check out my previous Sunday video by clicking on the screen on the Black Panther game. And I will speak to you soon. Goodbye.